Okay, guys, today we are going to learn and plug into the area and circumference formula of a circle. You may be familiar with these formulas. You may have seen them before, probably middle school-ish, possibly. If not, just a quick refresh. To find the area of something, area is how much can fit inside, and in this case we're talking about circles. So for the area of a circle, this is the formula that we would use. In order to do the area, you do need to know what the radius is, so that is going to be the first thing that you are going to want to identify when you're finding the area. And to find the area, capital A, equals pi times the radius squared. So you are going to need to use that square key on your calculator. Circumference is kind of like perimeter. Areas, everything on the inside. Circumference is on the outside. We can't say perimeter, though, for a circle because perimeter, the technical definition is adding up all of the sides of a figure. Well, a circle doesn't have sides, so we have its own special little name. For the circumference, there are two different formulas that you could use, but basically they mean the exact same thing. So for circumference, you could do 2 times pi times the radius, but if you have two radiuses, that's technically the diameter. So, or you could just figure out what the diameter is and multiply by pi. So these are the two formulas that you're going to be using today. Since I'm not here, I thought this would be something easy for you guys to do on your own. You don't really need me because you just plug these into the calculator. Now, one thing that I do want to make sure that you are aware of is that your answers could potentially be given in two different ways. So you need to kind of pay attention to the directions if they specify to leave your answer in terms of pi. I'm going to show you what that looks like. You're actually going to maybe prefer them to be in terms of pi because you don't really need one of my fancy calculators for that. And I know how much you guys don't like decimals, so if you leave things in terms of pi, technically there's not going to be any decimals. However, a lot of times when we do these, we do need to round them. So that is where you will get decimals. We are multiplying by pi, so just be aware that you are going to get some really gross, nasty decimals. Pay attention to the directions today, tomorrow, and from here on out, whether it's going to ask you how to leave your answer. If it does not say how to leave your answer, if it doesn't say to round or to leave things in terms of pi, you can pick. I probably will give answers on answer keys and stuff like that in both ways. So here are your formulas that you're going to need to keep handy. Here are some examples. So this one right here, these top two are going to be area formulas or area problems. So again, the area formula of a circle is pi times the radius squared. In this circle right here, this is the radius 12. So this person did pi times 12 squared. When you are leaving things in terms of pi, this is the answer right here in terms of pi. In terms of pi means that you don't actually multiply through by pi. You really think of pi as more of a variable. And when you're multiplying, you don't plug variables into your calculator. So what you do is you just take care of the numbers. Leave the pi alone. So 12 squared is 144, and then you just slap the pi on the end. So this is one answer that you could potentially have. This is in terms of pi. So if the problem asked you to leave it in terms of pi, you would leave it like that and then call it a day. However, if you get going on these and it doesn't specify how to write it or if it wants it rounded, you would plug in pi times 12 squared. On these calculators, pi is right here on this caret key. And it's you're going to have to press the second key first. So you would do second. So I'd have pi times the radius 12 squared. And you're going to need to press the square key. And then you get 452 point, I think we would all round that to 4. So that's how you plug these into the calculator. The other thing on these problems, I could give you the diameter, but remember that we want the radius for the area. So if I give you the entire diameter, the radius is half of that. So you're going to want to identify what the radius is first. That needs to be your first step. So then we plug in pi times the radius squared. 81 pi here, 9 squared is 81. That's what it would be in terms of pi, or if you just plug and chug it all in the calculator, you get 254 point, we would probably round that to 5. The other thing that you are going to be doing today is circumference. Circumference, there are 2 formulas that you can pick from. If you're given the radius, use the radius. If you're given the diameter, use the diameter. And again, you could potentially leave things in terms of pi again. So on this problem right here, these are circumference problems. You're given the radius, so I'm going to plug into the circumference formula with radius, 2 times pi times the radius. And again, if you're leaving it in terms of pi, you only multiply the numbers. Think of the pi as almost a variable. So I take 2 times 7 and I get 14. So this is also in terms of pi. That's what it would look like. But if you get going and you just want to plug them all in your calculator, you would just plug in 2 pi times 7. And that's where you get the 43.98, or we would probably round that to 44. And then here on this problem, you're given the diameter. Well, there is a formula for circumference with diameter. If it's area, you have to know the radius. If it's circumference, you can use the diameter. So if this is the diameter, 58, I'm just going to do diameter times pi, or pi times its multiplication, so either one works. So if I do diameter times pi, in terms of pi would be 58 pi. That could be one of my answers, or I just plug that into my calculator. So let me show you how to do these 2 right here. So in the directions, it says find the circumference and the area for the following figures. So I'm going to find the circumference and the area of each of these. So let's start out with our first formula on here is area. So let's start out with area. So to find the area, we need to know the radius. Well, that's actually what we're given right here. We are given that the radius is 16. So for the area formula, it says pi times radius squared. So if I want to leave this in terms of pi, I just do 16 squared in my calculator and I get 256. So 256 pi would be the area you could leave it like that, or you can actually do pi times 16 squared. And you get 804.2. Either one of those are going to be totally fine for your area. Now to find the circumference, we are given the radius, so let's use the radius formula. To find the circumference, it's 2 times pi times 16. Well, when you're finding the circumference, if I'm leaving it in terms of pi, I just multiply the numbers. Think of this as a variable. 2 times 16 is 32. So 32 pi would be the circumference in terms of pi, or if I want to just plug it all in, 2 pi times 16, I get 100.5. That also works. Either one of those is going to be totally fine. So try this one. Well, let's take a look at this one. So I'm not really there to go through things with you. So this problem right here, again, if I'm going to do the area and the circumference, the area formula uses the radius. So this 16 is the diameter. So I need to identify, so the diameter is 16, but if the diameter is 16, the radius is going to be half of that, which is 8. So take a couple of seconds now, pause this and see if you can figure out how to find the area and the circumference. Just for funsies, let's do it in terms of pi and rounded. Okay, so if you plugged them in correctly, the area would be 64 pi or 201.1. And for the circumference, you would have 16 pi or 50.3. So that's how you find the area and the circumference. So another example that I wanted to have you add in. Take a couple of seconds, get this written down, pause if needed. It says to find the radius of a circle so we're finding the radius. So our ultimate goal is to find R. And we are given a circumference of 21.99 feet. So up here is my circumference formula. So circumference equals 2 pi r. So let's fill in what we know. We know the circumference is 21.99. So that comes over here. 21.99 equals 2 pi r. Our ultimate goal is to get r by itself. So how in the world would we get r by itself? Well, all of this over here is being multiplied. So to undo multiplication, we would divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by everything that's being multiplied. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2 pi. The 2 and the pi cancel. I'm left with r. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 21.99 divided by 2 pi. And I get a radius. Oh, it didn't do it right. I think you're going to have to do it separately. 21.99 divided by, I think you have to put in parentheses, the 2 pi. There we go. The calculator's not smart enough to know that we want to do that. Like we're actually dividing by 2 and the pi all at once. So you are going to have to put the 2 pi in parentheses or just do divide by 2, take that, divide by pi. So my radius then, this would round, I think we can all agree that that would round to 3.5. And you can kind of check it. If you were to plug the 3.5 as a radius into your circumference formula, we would do 2 pi times 3.5, and you get 21.99, which is what the circumference was. So your job for today is to complete the worksheet front and back, finding the area and the circumference. When you're done, hold on to it for tomorrow, and I'll see you guys on Monday.